For centuries, the galaxy had witnessed the rise and fall of powerful civilizations. The Xilorians were one such race, a species of beings who had mastered technology beyond imagination. They were the epitome of superiority, conquerors of countless planets, and possessors of knowledge that stretched across the stars. In their minds, they had seen everything the universe had to offer, and were certain that no one could ever rival their strength. The Xilorian ships filled the skies of the galaxy, and their empire spanned across several systems. They were feared and respected by every species they encountered, and their technology had long ago rendered their enemies powerless. The Xilorians' pride was unrivaled, and they believed that nothing, not even the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, could ever challenge their reign. But everything changed when they encountered a planet called Earth. At first, the Xilorians' interest in Earth was purely scientific. They had detected unusual energy signatures from the planet and decided to investigate. They sent reconnaissance ships, cloaked and undetectable, to observe the planet from afar. The Xilorians were eager to understand what made this world so unique, but they did not expect to find anything of great importance. After all, Earth was an insignificant, mostly unremarkable planet by galactic standards. The inhabitants were primitive, their technology backward, and their civilization barely on the rise. Yet, as the Xilorians began their observations, they were baffled by what they saw. Earth's inhabitants, though technologically inferior to the Xilorians, displayed an unsettling resilience. It wasn't long before the Xilorians noticed something peculiar. Humans seemed to have a remarkable capacity to fight against overwhelming odds. The Xilorians had studied countless species, but none had ever displayed this level of stubborn defiance. They observed a small skirmish between humans and a much more technologically advanced species that had invaded their planet. Despite their inferior weapons, humans fought back fiercely. The invaders, who had more advanced technology, expected to overwhelm the humans quickly. But instead, they found themselves met with resistance they had never anticipated. The humans didn't just fight to defend their homes. They fought with an intensity that could only be described as unrelenting. They adapted quickly to the situation, using their surroundings and resourcefulness to outsmart their enemies. The Xilorians were intrigued. They had never seen a species this determined, this willing to sacrifice everything for survival. It wasn't the strength of their weapons or the power of their armies that impressed the Xilorians. It was the will of the humans. Their ability to survive, to fight back against seemingly impossible odds, was something the Xilorians hadn't accounted for. As the Xilorians watched, they saw another instance that left them speechless. A group of human soldiers, with nothing more than basic firearms and hand-to-hand combat skills, managed to infiltrate the heart of an alien warship. The crew, well-trained and armed with superior weapons, were caught off guard. It was not through brute force that the humans succeeded. It was through their cunning, their sheer will to accomplish what seemed impossible. The Xilorians had never encountered such a strategy before. In every previous conquest, they had faced enemies that were either technologically or militarily superior. But the humans, what made them different? Intrigued and slightly concerned, the Xilorians sent in more scouts. They were eager to understand this newfound threat, though they still believed that their own advanced technology would be more than enough to overpower humanity. But as they observed more battles, the Xilorians began to question their assumptions. The humans didn't just fight. They adapted, they learned, and they overcame. As the Xilorians delved deeper into humanity's culture, they realized that their initial observations had been naive. The humans were not simply a primitive species trying to protect their homes. They were a people shaped by constant struggle, a species forged by survival against all odds. Their greatest strength was not in their weapons or their technology, but in their hearts. What the Xilorians had failed to understand was that humanity had a power no other species could match. The power of the human spirit, a spirit that refused to break, that stood strong in the face of adversity. And the more the Xilorians watched, the more they began to realize that they were looking at something truly extraordinary. The Xilorians, once confident in their superiority, were beginning to see that the power they had always believed was theirs alone might no longer belong to them. The humans, it seemed, had something the Xilorians could never have predicted, a force far more powerful than any weapon or technology. This was just the beginning. The Xilorians were about to learn a lesson they had never prepared for. Never underestimate the power of humanity. As the Xilorians continued to observe Earth from the shadows, they began to uncover a deeper layer of humanity's strength, something far beyond their initial understanding. What they had dismissed as mere survival instinct was slowly transforming into something far more complex and formidable. This wasn't just a species fighting to defend itself. Humanity was showing a resilience and adaptability that no one had anticipated. The more the Xilorians watched, the more they realized that Earth's inhabitants possessed a quality that couldn't be measured by technology or military power. Humans had the ability to adapt to any situation, even in the most dire of circumstances. In the heat of battle, when everything seemed lost, humans found ways to turn the tide. It wasn't just about brute strength or advanced weapons. Humanity's true power lay in its intelligence and ability to innovate under pressure. For example, the Xilorians watched as a group of human engineers, surrounded by alien forces and with only limited resources, managed to create a makeshift device that disrupted the alien technology and allowed humans to gain an advantage. The aliens had vastly superior weapons, yet the humans used their creativity and problem-solving skills to outmaneuver them. The Xilorians couldn't believe their eyes. These humans, with nothing more than raw determination and a few scraps of equipment, had taken control of a situation that should have been beyond their reach. The Xilorians had long relied on their technological superiority, believing it was the key to their dominance in the galaxy. Their weaponry was unmatched, and their ships were faster, more powerful, and more advanced than anything humanity could ever create. But the humans, who lacked such advanced tools, were showing them a new way of thinking. They fought with ingenuity and courage, not relying on the power of their machines, but on their own resourcefulness. They were proving that true strength didn't come from the size of one's weapons, but from the ability to think outside the box and adapt. The Xilorians then witnessed something even more surprising: humanity's ability to unite. They saw how, despite the many differences between humans, cultural, political, and personal, when the time came, they could set aside their divisions and work together for a common cause. This sense of unity was unlike anything the Xilorians had seen before. Throughout their conquests, they had encountered countless species, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Many had been divided by internal strife, unable to come together to face external threats. But humans, even in the most chaotic of situations, found a way to join forces. They worked together to overcome obstacles, to fight back against invaders, and to protect their world. What the Xilorians didn't realize was that this unity wasn't just born out of necessity. It was ingrained in humanity's very nature. Humans had evolved to survive together, to face challenges as a collective. They shared a sense of solidarity that made them stronger than the sum of their parts. Whether it was a soldier fighting alongside a scientist or a civilian helping a warrior, the humans' unwavering bond was their greatest weapon. Even more astonishing to the Xilorians was humanity's spirit of sacrifice. They watched as humans gave up everything: family, safety, and even their lives, to protect what they loved. The Xilorians had never seen this level of selflessness before. They had encountered species that fought for power, for territory, and for survival. But humans fought for something different: for each other. This selfless spirit was a driving force that pushed humanity to achieve the impossible. The Xilorians began to understand that the true strength of humanity was not just in their ability to adapt or to fight back with ingenuity. It was in their unwavering commitment to one another. The human spirit, their capacity for self-sacrifice, and their ability to come together in times of need were qualities the Xilorians had underestimated. Despite all their advanced technology, the Xilorians could not replicate this strength. Their machines could be rebuilt, their armies could be replaced, but they could never manufacture the kind of unity and resolve that humanity possessed. The humans had a fire within them, a passion that could not be extinguished by threats or defeat. And this fire, this unseen strength, was something the Xilorians had failed to see from the beginning. As the Xilorians continued their observations, they started to question everything they had known. They had thought that strength came from technology, from weapons and machines, but now they were beginning to see that the true power of a species came from something much deeper, its heart. Humanity's strength was not something that could be measured by technology or military might. It was something that came from within, and it was far more powerful than anything the Xilorians could have ever imagined. The more they watched, the more they realized that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. The Xilorians had thought they knew power, but they were starting to see the truth. Humanity was a force like no other, and it was only just beginning to reveal its full potential. The Xilorians had spent months observing Earth, cataloging every detail, analyzing the human strengths and weaknesses. Their initial belief that the planet posed little threat had started to waver, but they still convinced themselves that their advanced technology would ultimately prevail. They were wrong. The moment of truth arrived when the Xilorians decided to initiate a full-scale invasion. They thought it would be a simple task. Earth was just another world. After all, one they believed was still caught in the early stages of technological development. Their fleets, packed with powerful warships, arrived without warning, flooding the skies above Earth. The humans had no chance, or so they thought. But what the Xilorians underestimated was the power of human determination. As the Xilorian ships descended, humanity's leaders were caught off guard, yet they refused to be paralyzed by fear. The people of Earth, from all walks of life, gathered to defend their home. Governments, military forces, civilians, and even young children rallied together. What seemed like chaos to the Xilorians was actually a powerful, coordinated effort to resist the invasion. The first wave of attacks began, and the Xilorians unleashed their advanced weaponry with devastating force. Lasers, plasma bombs, and particle cannons rained down on Earth's cities. Massive explosions rocked the planet, causing widespread destruction. Yet, despite the devastation, humanity did not break. They fought back. Human military forces, though armed with weapons far less advanced than the Xilorians, proved to be more resourceful than anyone could have imagined. They used guerrilla tactics, striking from the shadows, outsmarting their enemies at every turn. The Xilorians had expected to crush the resistance in a matter of days, but humanity's ability to adapt and innovate kept them on their toes. One of the most shocking moments for the Xilorians came when a group of humans, ordinary civilians, armed only with makeshift weapons, managed to disable one of their most powerful warships. The Xilorians, accustomed to seeing their technology rule supreme, were stunned. How could a handful of humans, with no advanced weapons, take down a vessel that was designed to withstand the fiercest attacks from entire fleets? It wasn't just about fighting back with whatever weapons they could find. It was about the cleverness and determination that humanity displayed. One group of engineers, working under impossible conditions, managed to hack into a Xilorian communication system, disrupting their entire fleet's coordination. A group of farmers, armed with nothing more than farming equipment, used their knowledge of the terrain to set traps and ambush Xilorian patrols. These weren't warriors. They were everyday people, fighting for their homes and loved ones, using whatever means they had at their disposal. The Xilorians couldn't believe their eyes. Every time they thought they had won, humanity found a way to rise up again. Even as entire cities were destroyed and lives were lost, the human spirit remained unbroken. The more the Xilorians watched, the more they realized they had misjudged humanity. They were not dealing with a weak, primitive species. They were up against a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. But the humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something much greater. They were fighting for each other. The The human capacity for self-sacrifice was unlike anything the Xilorians had ever seen. There were stories of soldiers giving their lives to protect civilians, of families offering shelter to the wounded, and of communities coming together to rebuild what had been destroyed. Every time humanity faced a setback, they picked themselves up and kept fighting, driven by the need to protect what mattered most. The Xilorians were beginning to feel the weight of their decision. They had underestimated humanity at every turn, but now they found themselves struggling. The human resistance, though outmatched, was relentless. The Xilorians had no choice but to acknowledge that they were no longer the most powerful species in the galaxy. Humanity's strength came from something they couldn't replicate: their will to fight for their planet, their families, and each other. The final turning point came when a small group of human warriors, armed only with basic firearms, managed to board one of the Xilorian flagship vessels. Despite overwhelming odds, they fought their way to the control room, using their knowledge of the ship's systems to disable its weaponry and communication networks. The Xilorians watched in horror as their prized warship was taken down by a handful of humans. This moment, this single act of defiance, was the breaking point for the Xilorians. As the Xilorians realized the full extent of humanity's resilience, they began to question their superiority. They had underestimated Earth in every way: its people, its resolve, and its ability to fight back against impossible odds. And now, as their fleet began to falter and humanity's resistance grew stronger, the Xilorians understood the truth. They had never known power until they had seen the strength of the human spirit. The humans, through sheer will and determination, had shown the galaxy that there was something more powerful than technology, more powerful than advanced weaponry. The Xilorians were no longer certain of their place in the universe. They had thought they were the most powerful species in existence, but they had just learned what true power really was. This was the moment of truth. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it was time for the universe to reckon with the might of the human spirit. As the battle raged on, the Xilorians found themselves in an unfamiliar position. Retreating. The once mighty empire, so confident in its superiority, was now faltering under the weight of humanity's unyielding spirit. The tide had turned, and the galaxy was witnessing something it had never seen before. A species, seemingly outmatched, holding its ground against the most advanced civilization in the universe. The humans had shown the Xilorians something that their technology could never have taught them. Strength does not lie in weapons or machines. It lies in the heart, in the determination to stand and fight for what matters most. The Xilorians had underestimated the depth of this strength, and now they were paying the price. The humans, though battered and bruised, were still fighting with everything they had. Cities lay in ruins, but the human spirit remained unbroken. The Xilorians could see it now more clearly than ever: the resilience of a species forged by adversity. The humans fought not just for survival, but for each other, for their families, their communities, and the future they wanted to build. Their courage wasn't born of technology or superiority. It was born of something far deeper, something that no weapon or fleet could ever replicate. As the Xilorian forces pulled back, they came to a shocking realization. Humanity's power wasn't something to be conquered or destroyed. It was something to be respected. For the first time, the Xilorians saw the true nature of the species they had once dismissed as insignificant. They saw the strength of humanity's unity, the courage of its people, and the power of its spirit. In a final desperate attempt to salvage what was left of their mission, the Xilorians made contact with Earth's leaders. They were prepared to negotiate, though their pride had taken a severe blow. The Xilorians, who had once believed they were the rulers of the galaxy, now understood that the universe was not as simple as they had thought. Power did not lie in domination. It lay in the ability to respect and understand those who were different from you. At first, Earth's leaders were cautious. They had no reason to trust the Xilorians, especially after the destruction they had caused. But as the Xilorians spoke, it became clear that they had come to a humbling conclusion. They no longer saw humanity as a threat to be crushed. They saw humanity as a species with strength, not just physical, but emotional and intellectual. The Exilorians, for the first time, acknowledged that humanity had taught them an invaluable lesson. True power lies not in force, but in the strength of character, unity, and resilience. The humans, too, had learned something from the Exilorians. Though their initial instincts were to resist and fight back, they had come to realize that violence and war could not be the only answers. They had seen the cost of conflict, lives lost, cities destroyed, and they understood that, despite their strength, peace was a far better path forward. The humans, with their incredible will to survive, had proven that they were capable of great feats, but they had also proven that they could grow, learn, and seek a better future. With the Exilorians withdrawing and agreeing to cease hostilities, humanity began to rebuild. The scars of war were deep, but the people of Earth were not ones to dwell on defeat. Instead, they focused on the future, using their newfound respect for one another and the lessons learned from their battle with the Exilorians to forge stronger, more peaceful relationships with other species. Earth became a symbol, not just of strength, but of the possibility for growth, understanding, and reconciliation. The Exilorians, having seen the truth of humanity's power, returned to their homeworlds, forever changed by the encounter. They shared their experiences with other species, telling them of the humans they had underestimated and the incredible strength they possessed. The galaxy, once filled with skepticism and prejudice toward Earth, now looked upon humanity with respect and awe. And so, the universe learned a new lesson. Never underestimate the power of a species whose greatest strength is not in its technology or weapons, but in its unbreakable spirit. The Exilorians, once the galaxy's most powerful force, had been humbled by humanity's indomitable will. Humanity had proven that, no matter the odds, no matter the challenges, they would never back down. In the end, the humans stood victorious, not because they had defeated the Exilorians, but because they had shown the galaxy the true meaning of power. The Exilorians had come to Earth expecting to crush a weak and primitive species. Instead, they had found a force that could never be defeated, the power of humanity. And that, the Exilorians now knew, was something far greater than any weapon, any fleet, or any empire. The true power of humanity lay in its heart, its courage, and its unwavering will to protect what it loved. And so, the galaxy was forever changed. The universe had underestimated humanity once, but it would never make that mistake again.